Hello, it's time for us to palaver. In The Gunslinger, we are introduced to Roland, the mysterious gunslinger, a sociopathic killing machine with otherworldly battle prowess and questionable morals and ethics. He's obsessed on his journey for the Dark Tower, and he's willing to give up anything to accomplish his goal. In the drawing of the three, Roland gets his quartet, his fellowship of individuals who are destined to help him journey for the Dark Tower. This one was a lot of fun, but not nearly as good or as masterfully written as The Wasteland, Stephen King's third installment in his Dark Tower series. I'm not going to lie, every installment of this series is head and shoulders above the previous installment. The Gunslinger was mid to slightly unfavorable for me. The drawing of the three was the most fun I've ever had reading a Stephen King book. It was a thrilling action adventure, portal fantasy, time jumps, everything. It even had a naked gunfight. I love a good naked gunfight, let me tell you. But The Wasteland knocked me off my feet. If the drawing of the three is the fellowship being gathered, the quartet, the individuals destined and joined together by fate, then this one is about the quartet learning how to deal with each other. And that's very interesting. I really feel like after finishing the third installment in this series, we're finally done with the tutorial part of the Dark Tower. 3 books down, 4 more to go, and one in-between book that was written after the final installment of the series, and I've loved it. The Wasteland is my favorite Stephen King book in the series so far. I've heard that Wizard and Glass is even better. If that is true, I'm very excited to continue on my journey towards the Dark Tower. Because this is the third installment in the Dark Tower, there's going to be some light spoilers, like character names, if character names can even be spoilers. But if you aren't familiar with the 2 previous books, probably don't watch this. But I will not be spoiling anything that is going to ruin your reading experience if you have not read this book that is over 20 years old at this point. First things first, Stephen King has a well-earned reputation for writing bloated stories. I love him for it, but other people, this is a characteristic of his writing that is annoying and bothersome and makes him a little bit hard to dive into as an author. But let me just say, the ground he covers in The Wasteland is impressive. It is 582 pages. It felt like 1,000. That's not to say that it was slow. The pacing was breakneck. Very rarely do I read 400 pages in 2 days. I'm a slower on the scale of booktubers. I am a slower reader. I read about 150 pages a day, and that's if I'm really hitting my groove. But I've read 80% of The Wasteland in 1 weekend, and that is very impressive because Stephen King really feels like you went through several months of a journey in The Wasteland. So even though Stephen King is known for his bloated writing, I must say, in my experience, and I've read about 20 Stephen King books at this point, The Wasteland is his least bloated work. It's so lean and mean, and I loved it. It is the strongest installment in the series so far, and it's in one of my top 5 Stephen King books, period. And he's my favorite author, so high praise indeed. I must say, one advantage that the drawing of the three has over The Wasteland is the drawing of the three is like an action thriller story. Lots of action, lots of gunfights, lots of violence, lots of exciting scenes. The Wasteland, though there are plenty of exciting scenes, and there is action, and there is high stakes, and there is tension, is a lot more of an introspective story. There's a lot more of emotional things happening as opposed to big epic battles happening until about the last 20% or so. We really get more background into the history of Roland's world and of the lore that is the historical lore of the Gunslingers as a group of individuals. Like, if you read the first book, you just read the first line. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. And you're like, okay, gunslinger, this is a cowboy. But then he seems kind of like a knight figure. And then there's kind of some priest overtones. Is he a religious crusader type of soldier person? We get some more background into that in the Wasteland. And that was really cool to see how people in this world interact with Roland, the reverence and respect they have for the gunslingers because Roland is the last gunslinger. And I would say there's not a lot of world building in the Dark Tower so far in the first 3 books, so I'm imagining there's not going to be a lot of well thought out, well explained world building. Upon completing the Wasteland, I do understand a little bit more about why Roland is on his quest and why he feels drawn and driven obsessively towards the Dark Tower. You see what is happening to his world. It is a world in decay, it is dying, it is truly a world that has moved on. And Roland is trying to save it. He is one of the last holdovers from the world before it was falling apart. So in some ways, Roland represents order, the benevolent past, the good old days, and he's trying to stop his world falling into decay. And that's a really noble goal. But that's not to say Roland is a paragon person. He is a very flawed character. And oftentimes you will hate Roland. I've hated him for the majority of these 3 books. But one thing I love so much about the Dark Tower series so far at this point is just how human and realistic the interactions and the relationships between these characters are. Like, it's super accurate to how people would act in a high-stress adventure situation. Like, you read the old school stories. These people are going on adventures, they're fighting epic battles, they're encountering a lot of stress and tension, and they're always just united. They're of one mind. They're always making sacrifices for each other. They just seem larger than life. But all of the characters in the quartet, they are very human. They are petty. They are immature at times. They keep secrets, and they're irrational, and they look down on each other, and then sometimes that just flips all suddenly, like one of them does something amazing, then everyone's just so excited, so happy, so positive, and then they say something stupid, and all that momentum is lost. It's so realistic. These are truly flawed, broken, traumatized people in their own ways, and they're trying to do their best to be a fellowship, to be a group on an adventure. And I love that. Stephen King has a talent for writing lifelike characters, and the characters in the quartet, in our fellowship of individuals, are very lifelike, and I feel like I know them. My favorite character in The Wasteland is Susanna. She is equal parts class and sass, and she is truly the heart of the quartet. She is the mother figure. She is always giving people emotional support, but she is sassy, and she speaks her mind, and she's very strong. Stephen King does a very good job at writing strong female characters, and Susanna is a very memorable, very strong character. And I can't wait to see how her character arc continues to develop, and she is by far the character I have the biggest emotional attachment to. Though Susanna is my favorite character, The Wasteland is really about Eddie and Eddie's character development. When we encounter Eddie, he is broken. He is traumatized. He is fighting his demons. He has a monkey on his back. And just seeing him blossom as a character in The Wasteland, seeing him mature and grow into this strong individual was really inspiring at times. And though Susanna is my favorite right now, I imagine that as the story progresses, that Eddie's going to become my favorite character. I really see a lot of young men reading the Dark Tower series and relating super strongly to Eddie. And that's just because he's a man that didn't have the center to his circle. He was being tossed to and fro by everything that influenced him. Everything in his life was outside of his control. He had no agency as a person, but he's discovering that he has agency. And I can't wait to see how his story arc continues. There's also some really cool things happening with Roland's character development, but I still don't like him. He is more humanized in The Wasteland. We're seeing a lot more of his soft attributes, but Roland is still out of his mind, keeping secrets, doing sketchy things. He's still an unstoppable killing machine, though he has been nerfed a little bit. I just really hope that towards the end of this series, I can find some love in my heart for Roland, because he's cool. He's very compelling. He's very interesting, but I'm just not emotionally connected to Roland. Though I must say, the things I hated about Roland the most are less of an issue now, and I'm happy about that. I think Roland's going to grow immensely throughout this series, and I'm interested to see how Stephen King's going to tackle all these character arcs. It's impossible to talk about any installment of The Dark Tower without discussing briefly just how strange and weird and unpredictable this series is. I have no idea where my journey for The Dark Tower is going to go. I have no idea what Stephen King is planning with this series. I know they're going for The Dark Tower. I know that's the goal, but I have no idea what's going to happen on the way there. There was some very interesting dream sequences in the Wasteland that I'm sure were foreshadowing things that are going to happen later on in the series. And I'm sure after I complete the series, I'll go back to those scenes and reread them and see them in a new light. But I'm understanding a little bit more why people don't ask you, have you read The Dark Tower? They ask you, do you read The Dark Tower? I see people constantly rereading the series, and that's compelling. I hate rereading books. It happens for me very rarely when I feel like I need to reread a book. But it does intrigue me. It does capture my attention that people talk about reading this series as if it's a continuous, lifelong endeavor. And I'm one step closer to understanding that. I don't know what's happening, but I'm along for the ride. I don't know what will be sacrificed on the road towards the Dark Tower, but I know our characters will encounter all manner of hardship. They will fight some very strange villains and monsters. There will be some very strange psychedelic scenes. Stephen King will do some multiverse stuff. He's probably going to get meta at some point, and I'm all here for it. Stephen King is truly one of the GOATs. He's just a natural storyteller. And even though his stories are hard to follow, there's not a lot of plot structure. He breaks a lot of the rules. The Dark Tower is truly something special, and I can't wait to see where this literary journey goes. I know there are plenty of people that have read the series that are watching this and being like, you have no idea. And I don't. And that's kind of exciting. It's always cool to read something when you're unsure of where the journey is going, because a lot of stories that are written in the present day are very, or maybe not predictable, but the endings make sense. The middles make sense. They follow a very, specific, well thought out plot and story structure. But The Dark Tower is just a different beast entirely. And I can't wait to finish this and then over the next few months. It's going to be great. Stephen King is my favorite author for a reason. I could wax philosophically about him. I will gush all the time when I talk about him. And I'm just happy to be on this literary journey. And I can't wait to see where it goes. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.